So I brought a lot of baggage in, and to be honest with you, God offers forgiveness for our sins, but He doesn't take away the consequences.
Yeah. Welcome to the Savage Servant Podcast. My name is Nick.
My name's Jason. Today we have with us Cleve Gray. Cleve, we're gonna go through your story, your testimony, some of the things you've gone through with me at Men's Retreat, and the story you told me when we first met. Really impressed me, your story. But before you go into that, just tell us a little bit about you for people that don't know you. Like what you do, what your family's like.
Okay, well, I wake up every day, and every day is a gift of God, because I should not be here for multiple reasons. I started off with spinal meningitis when I was an infant. I was legally dead 3 times, and they told my mom, that I may not be able to walk or talk or hear. I would have complications. And life has been a struggle since then. It's been an uphill battle. But I thank God for the battle, because it's made me who I am. I grew up with a single mom. She was a rebel. She rode with the Harley Davidson, rode with the Hells Angels. She loved to just be wild. She drove stock cars and demolition derby. She drove the figure 8 back in the stock cars when they crossed.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, she was a crazy one. But
wow.
What happened was, I was a result of a dare when she was single, and she ended up getting married, and then ended up leaving my dad because of abuse. Broke my collarbone, threw me against the wall. So it's been a crazy ride. But what I've gone through is reflected in who I've become, and that is reflected in who my children are becoming. So I wouldn't trade any of it for anything.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3 children. We lost one in an accident in 2005, 96, head-on collision. My wife was 8 months pregnant, and we almost all died, including my 4-year-old daughter. But we made it through that one, only to follow several others. So we have 3 living children. I have 2 daughters and a son. And my daughter just got married, and the other daughter's getting ready to get married, and I just became a grandpa, and my son turned 18 yesterday and is graduating Tuesday.
Oh wow! Congratulations! Yeah.
So,
boy, girl?
Young man. Yes.
No, your grandchild.
Oh, little girl.
Little girl.
Little girl.
Nice.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I having an unusual name. I name all my kids kind of different names. My daughter didn't come up with a name until a month after the baby was born. She had
after the baby was born?
9 months to come up with a name. She didn't do it.
How do you? So what do you do if you have a baby and you don't name it?
I don't remember. I think they dash or something, but they had to, But anyway, to make a long story short, I said, what's going on? She goes, Dad, you gave us the most awesome names. They meant something to you, and I want something like that, and I can't figure it out. So a month later, she came up with the name. The name is, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Brain injury kicked in. I can't remember my granddaughter's name. It'll come to me. Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
What are the names that you used for your kids that meant so much to you?
Sierra was the firstborn, and back then you never heard the name Sierra. Now you occasionally hear it. Sierra is after the mountains. I'm a backpacker, and I just love the mountains.
Okay.
Autumn is my favorite season. That was my other daughter. And then Coulter is my son's name, and he's named after John Coulter, the scout for Lewis and Clark, who led Lewis and Clark expedition.
Oh, that's really cool.
That is cool.
And I read a story about him getting captured by the Apaches. They stripped him naked and said, you got half an hour, an hour to get away. And if you can get away, you can live. And he got away.
Wow, that's pretty cool, actually.
He got away. He dove underwater and was drinking through a straw or something. And they're looking for him, and they couldn't find him. I'm like, that's cool.
That's really cool.
So that's where my son got his name.
No, that's cool. I guess it's more meaningful than just picking it out of a book. I feel guilty for just looking through a book.
It took. God, it took forever to get
whatever name you pick is going to stick, and you'll fall in love with it. Just do it.
No, that's true. That's true, man.
Yeah. But my children have been a gift, because I did not want to be married, and I definitely didn't want children because I grew up in an abusive home.
Yeah.
And I said, I do not want to repeat that. I don't want to make the same mistakes. And unfortunately, or fortunately, God had a different plan. And he brought a woman into my life that was a woman after his heart, and she changed my life. And I knew when I married her that the kids were going to come along. That was part of the deal.
Yeah.
It tends to be a theme.
Yeah. Oh, we were all sharing the same things, and how one of our biggest reasons for changing was a woman that is currently in our lives, both him and I.
And the children.
And definitely the children,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it was with the children. When the children came, we were on a backpack, my wife and our backpack, and then she said, you need to sit down, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, I sat down, and she told me, and I'm like, so to make a long story shorter, I said, I'm over my head. I need help.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to renew my faith and pursue what I had earlier in life. In middle school, I was going to a Christian school. I was in love with the Lord. I wanted to serve in the ministry. I wanted to pursue that. Things happened. My parents split. My stepfather and mother split. And I put my faith on it. In anger, whatever, for several reasons, I put my faith on the shelf. And to be honest with you, what happened was, and truthfully, I found another God.
What was that?
The opposite sex.
Yeah.
It consumed me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is all I want. I don't care about anything else. That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
And luckily, my mom, in the divorce, decided, you know what? I grew up in Del Paso Heights. I was in the hood, constantly fighting, trying to, protect myself because I was a minority. I was small. I wasn't this small stature back then. And so, anyways, she moved us down to the desert. Out in the middle of the desert, 150 miles from the nearest city in either direction.
She said, fight somebody out here. There's nobody out there.
It was crazy. But, I grew up, no self-esteem, very awkward, clumsy. But down there, I had an opportunity I wouldn't have had here. And that was, I got to play sports. Because they needed bodies. And that changed everything for me.
What sport did you?
I started with football.
Yeah.
And then I wrestled. Those two. But that gave me some self-confidence I never had. And I realized that I could do things that I always thought I couldn't. And what I didn't do was I didn't do good in school. What happened was when I was going to school here, I was doing good. I was in what they called a biomedical program. It was a brand new program. It was a 2 or 3 year program. And I got an inter-district transfer, so I could go out of district to go to school, because I was supposed to go to Grant High School. And so I was doing good, but then when I got shipped down there, I copped an attitude. I'm like, I'm done. I was doing everything right. Now I'm out here in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So down there, all they did was party. That's all they had to do. 100 miles from their city, living in the desert. So they would just pull the trucks, circle up the trucks at night around a big bonfire and party all night long. And that was our life. Then I got a job at the mine during my senior year. And this is 35 years ago.
Mining what?
I was making 35, 50, it was 30 or 40, 50 bucks an hour. I can't remember what it was, but it was crazy money. And I said, this is how they get people to stay here. So I graduated on a Friday or Thursday or whatever. I was gone by Monday. So I need out of here. I can't get sucked into this. So I came back up Sacramento.
What were you mining there? What did they mine?
Iron ore.
Iron ore.
Iron ore, yeah.
That is tough work.
And it was one generation after another. Because, they made good money. They had, housing was provided by the company, so they just had money, and all they did was put it into drugs and partying.
That's how I felt when I worked when I was like 20-ish. I started at a beer distributor here in Sacramento, and and it was the first time I ever made real money, and I was like, I don't know how people do this forever though.
Exactly.
But then I started to realize that was the only thing they knew how to do. It was the only thing they knew how to make real money for. And then I started watching them, the younger ones started having kids, and they would stop working on anything else, and they would get stuck in it, and it'd scare the crap out of me.
Yeah.
And that's when I left. That's when I went and did my first EMT class. And
thought I was balling out of control pushing carts at Walmart in that age. Before I got into being a tech.
Yeah. So you took off on a Monday, or you took off right after you graduated?
Right after I graduated.
You came back up here to Sacramento?
I was gone. I'm like, I'm out of here. And I knew because I get sucked into it. And, you know, I had done well to stay away from the drugs and everything back up here, but down there I got sucked into it. I'm like, you know, I need to go. Because I saw what my friends, you know, generation after generation, they get caught into that. And I'm like, I'm not strong enough to stay here. I need to go isolate, get away.
That's a pretty, you know, big decision to make at that age, and really, you know, not get sucked into that, because that's about the age when you want to do those things. Where partying and you know, getting sucked into that lifestyle is a very easy thing to do, because it's, you know, you're in high school.
It's hard in an environment like that too. Like small towns, they have a lot of drug and alcohol issues. Because like you said, there's nothing else to do.
That was huge. That was a big decision.
Yeah.
Good decision. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, looking backwards at my life, I see the Holy Spirit's presence.
Yeah.
Guiding me and kind of prompting me, and you know, sometimes I responded, sometimes I didn't, but I definitely see some interaction there, especially when it comes to meeting my wife.
Yeah. How did you meet her?
I was working 2 jobs, and I just started my business, and I was going to school.
Wow.
So I was pushing it. So my buddy comes to me one night. I had finished school, and I had a swing shift at a gas station. He comes in and he goes, "Hey, my buddy's in town. Come visit us." I'm like, "No way. I worked all day. I'm working now. I get off. Tomorrow I got to run my business and then go to work." He goes, "Just come out for a little while." He finally kept pushing. I'm like, "All right." So I showed up at Black Angus, a bar, and my wife was there. And she didn't drink, she didn't party. She's pretty straight-laced in that respect, but she loved to dance. And I walked in and I stood in line. I stood in line for like 15, 20 minutes, a big long line. And my buddy saw me in line, and they come up and they go, "Hey, we're out of here." They've been waiting for a long time for me. They said, "We're leaving." I said, "I'm not going anywhere," because I saw her. I said, "I'm meeting that woman." So I went up to her and said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this story, but my friends are leaving. They've been waiting. Can I get your phone number?" She looked at me, she goes, No, I don't give my phone number to anybody." I go, "Oh, man, they're leaving." I said, "All right, let's go dance." So we danced a couple dances. My buddies are like, "Come on, dude, let's go." I'm like, "I'm not leaving, man."
You're already committed now, huh?
Yeah. So she goes, "All right, tell you what, we'll go out in the parking lot and talk." So we went out in the parking lot and talked. Next thing I know, we all loaded up, stopped somewhere, got a 6-pack or whatever, and went over down to Jonas Salk School. Went over there and sat all night long talking about God, talking about whatever for like hours. And that's cool. How we met.
That's really cool.
That is kind of a meant-to-be story.
Yeah. Because I didn't want anything to do. I wasn't dating at the time. I was so busy. You
didn't have any time.
Yeah, and I was like, and I wanted nothing, but she swept my feet up from under me. So that was definitely awesome. God.
Yeah.
The other thing that was God was, she was a woman like I'd never met. She was the woman that flat out just said, no, we're not going there.
Yeah. Everybody
else would. So I never stayed. I never had a relationship. I was out for one thing.
Yeah.
When I got that one thing, I was gone.
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, it's not happening." So she made me stick around and explore and learn who she was, and the relationship developed. So that was definitely a God thing.
Yeah, I can definitely say that was a part of my life, very much in the same thing, but that pleasure-seeking part in that area of life, that you just have that one carnal need that you want satisfied, and once you get that, it's just you go chasing after the other for whatever reason, and then you find that one.
Yeah.
How many times have we said that throughout all of our interviews?
I think that's come up for almost every single person.
Every single one. You just find that one, and it's like your spark plug for change.
It was amazing. I mean, we're talking across a room, huge bar full of people, and our eyes caught, and I'm like, whoa.
And then once you find out that you're changed for that person, the last thing you ever think about doing is like, I'm not living without you. You're crazy.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
So, and I definitely married up, so.
Yeah, I think we all do that, right?
Yep.
In some fashion.
But then we struggled.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we struggled because I brought so much baggage. I was so broken and brought so much into the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked like the perfect person, but she had her issues too. And man, we struggled, and we shouldn't be together. And it was so bad. And I knew I would never leave, and she would never leave. We're just too strong-headed. Mm-hmm. And I just got to the point where I just wanted to die. Just wanted to die. And then I ended up having cancer.
Now, when you say the struggles that you dealt with, what were you dealing with in the relationship? What was like the biggest things that you had to face internally?
We were different. We were different in physical aspects. Yeah. What I wanted and what she wanted, and we come in two different levels, and those didn't match up. And I expected things that couldn't happen. There's just no way. So I brought a lot of baggage in, and to be honest with you, God offers forgiveness for our sins, but He doesn't take away the consequences.
Yeah.
So I had to deal with consequences of my past, and then taking that into the relationship, and then her having to deal with that. So we had to go through that, and in a lot of ways, I'm so thankful that we did, because when you really go to the bottom of it with a relationship with a person, and you struggle and you fight through, and then you learn that God is supposed to be at the center, and you place Him at the center, the places you can go later are unbelievable, because you've been all the way at the bottom, and now you go all the way to the top.
Yeah.
So as we put God as the triple braided cord, the third part of our marriage, it's become my greatest value in life. I'm sorry, that was challenged. God is my greatest value in life. And He challenged me on that a few years back. He goes, you value your wife more than you value me. That can't be. I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, yeah, my position is this, her position is this. You have those mixed up. I said, but I'm worshiping you by loving her. And he goes, no, that's not the same thing.
How did He challenge that?
Pardon?
How did that get challenged in your life?
Okay, this is a crazy story. I'm part of a men's group, several men's group. But after some teaching on one of the groups, the person that was teaching said, your wife is your sister in Christ. And I remember that didn't sit well with me. I was on my way home, driving home, and I got mad. And I don't get angry very often. I was like, look, Lord, you've taken everything. You've taken both my businesses. You've taken my aspirations. You've taken my dream to have property. You've taken this. You've taken that. I'm physical pain. Now you want to take my wife, my lover, and turn her into my sister? I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
So I struggled with this for a while, for like a week or two. I can't remember. But I'm praying about it. I'm like, okay, so what do I do? And finally one day He just gently put a thing on my heart. And He said, what are you doing? I didn't ask you to love your wife any less than you love her. I just asked you to put me in my proper place. I'm like, okay. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And because I idolize my wife and my family. Because of what I grew up with, it was like I had reached the pinnacle. This is the ultimate. And God's like, no, there's more.
Yeah, well, that's what you had always wanted, right? Going through that as a kid?
Actually, no. I didn't even know it existed.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't until later,
Yeah, he had said that he
reading
didn't
books.
want it.
I'm a reader. That's how I changed my life. I read books, and I would read books, and I'm like, wow. But there were things that I didn't even know existed. I didn't know people had good marriages.
Yeah.
I didn't know people had good relationships. I thought everybody yelled at each other and screamed, and I found out differently.
Did you find one of the hardest parts that affected your marriage throughout the years was that you had to go through and like peel back the layers of who you were in front of your wife, and in doing so, that kind of hurt the relationship in a way? Because you were having to like tear down what was and rebuild all over again in the process. You know, things can change in a relationship. Feelings can get hurt because of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's so much was the case. I think our relationship struggled in many ways because I was so driven to prove myself, and I just had these hard expectations for myself, and I was working these ungodly hours. So I was gone. There wasn't time invested in her. Mm-hmm. The time wasn't invested. I was investing the time into trying to provide for her financially to let her be a stay-at-home mom, but I was gone. I mean, for example, recently she mentioned, I don't remember what she mentioned, but recently I just came to the realization that all those years I'm working crazy, drive myself into the ground because I love her, and she's thinking I didn't want to be home. She's thinking I'm working these ungodly hours because I didn't want to be around. I'm like, how did you think that? I was doing this for you. But then again, going back to the peeling the onion. Yeah. Then I had to realize, really, were you doing it for her, or was there also some motivation just for you? Which I had to realize, yeah, you in your heart you felt you were doing it for her, but in your heart you wanted to succeed. Yeah. You wanted to prove that you could do it, and because it was taking such an ungodly price, and you didn't realize it, you just kept pushing, and that's something I've realized about if I could do it all over again. I'm not sure I'd do a whole lot of things differently, but what I would do differently is I would learn to communicate with God and to seek out His wisdom and guidance instead of trying to rely on everything on me. Yeah. Because I was just off the mark instead of listening and having Him say, no, this is where you should be investing.
Do you feel like you do that better now?
I most certainly do, and that's.
How do you do that? How do you feel like you've done that the most effectively? Like, what's different now than then?
Coming out of my decision to put God back in my life came a group of men that I started meeting with, and we meet Friday mornings. Originally we met at Friday mornings at 5:30 in the morning every week, and that's going on 30 plus years. I can't remember exactly how long.
Same group of guys?
Yeah, same group of guys.
That's incredible.
36 years or something. But the answer to your question is that group of guys, when we started, we're all young fathers, all young husbands, and we were reading Christian books about how to be a better father, about how to be a better husband, how to be a better man. After my accident, kind of reevaluating things, I said, we need to take this weekly meeting and figure out how to get closer to God, how to build our faith, how to build some spiritual disciplines, and less about trying to become something. And in other words, letting God work on the inside, and then the change comes through Him instead of our own efforts. So I'm learning. So with that said, I think going back to the answer of your question was, we went from reading these books to digging into the Word of God, to going into the Word and reading and studying. And the Word of God is sharper than any two-edged sword. It started cutting away things, cleaning up, changing. Not just me, but the guys in the group. And as I moved in that direction, the group of men that I led was about being a good father and a good husband. But when it came to Christ, I wasn't sure I even believed. Yeah. I was full of doubt. And I remember one time, just a communication on my heart, where God said, you can't come to me except through Christ. I'm like, I'm not sure you even believe in Christ, that he wasn't just something made up or a story that took off. And he goes, seek him. Read the word, seek him, find out. And I did. I started reading, started studying. As I did, I came to know him. And as I came to know him, those doubts that I had began to fall away. As I came to know him, all these things that I'd been trying to clean up and become so I could be a better Christian began to just change and fall away. Not by my efforts, because my efforts failed continually. Continually. God started to work through his word. And I saw it in the guys in the group too. Two of the guys in the group are in serious struggles, more than I've ever known, and I've been through some major struggles. But they are dealing with their wives having Alzheimer's and dementia. And they are serving and loving like Christ. And they look forward to this group every week, especially since we've gotten into the Word and really digging into the Word. And it's like, wow. And to see the transformation, to see the power that each of us is receiving by being in God's Word, by allowing the Holy Spirit to prompt us and work in us and give us strength, and less relying on our own abilities. We're going in directions that we couldn't do on our own. There's no way.
I'm not gonna lie, the Alzheimer's dementia thing is like one of my biggest fears for myself. Seeing at the hospital, seeing people go through it, like it's honestly I think probably my biggest fear. Like I would rather pass away. I would rather, like, anything like that. I've never thought about having to have your spouse go through it in front of you. That would be really hard. I think that it takes a really strong person to do that. I can't imagine.
I can't imagine a more difficult burden.
No.
That would just
even having it
every
myself.
day
Even having it
destroy
myself, I wouldn't know. But having a spouse, I mean, they have to. It's just, I don't want to go into detail.
That would be even harder. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
If having it yourself would suck, but you can't even
watching them go through that.
Yeah,
no.
The person that you love.
Having your spouse call the police and tell them that you're beating her up, or that he's beating you, just different, or just crazy stories.
Having no idea what's going on. Yeah, that would be so difficult.
But seeing these men lean into it and love their wives regardless, continually.
That unconditional love.
It takes a strong person for sure.
Well,
it does.
It takes operating out of strength beyond your own.
Yeah,
that's a good way to.
Because I don't want to. One of them just said flat out, the only reason I'm here is because God has given me the ability to stay in the trench. Otherwise, I'd be gone. That's hard.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's the power that's available to us through the Holy Spirit.
So this men's group, you guys met, and you originally met trying to grow as fathers, husbands, and then you kind of graduated into learning about God together and growing in your faith. Was it more about studying together? Was it more about holding each other accountable? What were the actual, like, tactical things you guys did every time you met?
Typically, it's more of a group study. We take a chapter and study for that week, and then kind of hold each other accountable to the things that we've been learning. And again, it wasn't really spiritual disciplines. It was more about communication, serving your wife, your children, investing in them, and making a dividing line between your occupation and your family. Because too many men get sucked into their occupation, and their families take the short of it. So that's where we held each other more accountable. Now we're moving into the direction where we're trying to hold each other accountable in our communication. We just finished a couple books. Before we get into the epistles, we finished a couple books on meditation and prayer and fasting, and so spiritual disciplines.
Okay.
I think that's one thing as men. Obviously, we like to do certain things. We like to problem solve and we like to provide. And a lot of times that provision comes from providing in a monetary sense. You know, we think we're doing the right thing, food in your mouth, clothes on your back, roof over your head. This is everything a wife or a child could want. And in my childhood, that's what I experienced with my father. It was the same thing, is he was constantly working, thinking that he was just providing from that one aspect, and that's all we needed.
Right.
But the provision has to come across the board, mentally, emotionally, physically being there. It's not just from a monetary standpoint. And we get so sucked into that,
We do.
that we get that tunnel vision.
And you asked the question, well, would we hold each other? That's one of the things that we did, is we held each other accountable to the things we're learning about communication, about investing in your wife, and how to serve her. You know, by typically, we don't like to talk, right? So we're learning to talk to your wife. And one of the big things was learning to ask questions and prompting them to open up and speak to you. And not giving one-word answers, because we like to get one-word answers and be done with it. Or we like to problem solve. We like to fix things. And women sometimes don't want their problem solved. They just want to be heard. They just want somebody to listen and not blow them off. And that's hard, because as men, we want to listen, but we want to fix it.
Exactly.
Oh, we want to fix it.
The whole time you're listening a lot.
You're trying to think of
in your head.
solutions
You're
the
like,
whole time, yeah.
I would do this.
Yep.
Or do that. Yeah.
Yep.
I had to start asking. I was like, do you want me to listen, or do you want me to give my opinion?
Right.
And that kind of navigated certain conversations. But you're right. You're right, 100%. That is a great piece of advice.
And one of the things in my walk that I've learned that's really made a difference in my life is the term, I use the term, and I think it was Henry Nouwen, a couple books I've read, but he said, dying to self. We want to put our needs in front of others. We're driven by needs and desires. We have this drive. Sometimes just overcoming that and saying, what is the other person's needs? Recognizing the other person's needs, your spouse, your friends, whoever, your coworker, and looking beyond the surface needs and figuring out the deep needs of that person.
Yeah.
And then going in that direction. Needs that sometimes they don't even know they have. I'll use an example. Maybe I already said it, I don't remember. But we avoided conflict. We didn't argue. And one night, in one particular time, God just said, you know, you think that's noble, but it's not. It's self-serving. You don't argue, you don't challenge your wife, you don't confront her, you don't hold her accountable because you don't want to go there, because it's difficult for you. And sometimes loving is going to difficult places. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100% it does.
And it's like, okay. And I remember, did I already tell you about this? About talking with our children?
No.
Okay. So the Lord is teaching me this. It's like, to love means go to the hard places, going beyond yourself. And I remember, I'm like, okay, part of the reason we didn't argue is because I know she kicked my butt. I don't even bother her. So, just go on. Anyways, so one night she's talking with the children, one of the children, and she says something, and the way she says it, I'm like, oh no, that's wrong. And I go about my business. And the Lord put in my heart, he goes, that right there, I told you I'd give you steps of obedience. I'll go back to that in a minute. Steps of obedience, and when you do those, I'll give you, this is a step of obedience I'm asking you to go to. And I'm like, no. You want me to talk to her about this? I can't. Because you can. You trust me to speak through you. And you don't speak in your emotions, you just speak what I'm prompting you. Like, really? He goes, yeah, it's about dying to self. Putting somebody else in front of you. That's love. So I walk out of the room and I go, oh, no. And I call her aside and I said, can we talk? So we go in the bedroom and shut the door. And I said, the way you corrected the child, whatever happened, it was a little harsh, maybe wrong. You might want to think about a different approach. And the next couple of days, I'm like, she heard me. She changed.
Really?
That's what I said. Really? I'm like, whoa, what was that? She didn't, when we're confronted, we push back or
get defensive and yeah.
Defensive. She didn't. I'm like, wow. And I remember asking God, really? Couldn't you taught me this 30 years ago? He said, you weren't ready. You weren't ready.
That's a hard thing to understand too. Like when people tell you that, when you hear, the signs and everything, you're like, you weren't ready. But you think you were, because at the time that you get that signal, you're like, but I could have used this years ago.
Yeah.
And he's like, no. You weren't even close. I could have given it to you. And I use the mindset of, it's like giving, a 16-year-old a Ferrari. They're not going to understand like what it took to get it, take care of it, or anything else. He's like, it just would have been a waste. It wouldn't have the effect that it
Did you avoid, or do you think you avoided the conflict because of the way you saw your parents interact, and you were worried about going down that road and like having negative like conflict or critical discussions?
Yeah, it was actually a double answer. That was part of it. The other part of it was fear factor, because I knew anything that I challenged her on. My wife comes from a very strong-willed family, one that will put you in your place. Okay, and I'm like, I don't need to be put in my place. I don't need it.
Yeah.
And so I would avoid it out of that reason. Going, it's why bother? Because they know they're right, so they're not going to change. I'm like, okay, so why bother? Well, and God put in my heart, He goes, because you love somebody. That's why you go to a difficult place. But you don't go there on your strength. You go there on my strength, my guidance. You let me speak through you. That's not a place I was originally at, so I couldn't even hear Him. But as I did, I'm like, okay. And He'd give me the words. I'm like, or I don't know if He gave me the words, but He would give me the heart to speak to somebody. So in other words, I divorced my emotions out of it. How I feel is irrelevant. What's best for you, for her, or my children? What's best for my children, or my friends, or anybody else? I just had a conversation with one of my friends, and I'm like, and it's definitely a sign of transformation to me, because I had a difficult conversation with somebody, and that's not me. I tend to avoid that kind of stuff. I'm like, that's your life, that's your responsibility. I'm not going to interfere. And God goes, no. You see something, and you love somebody, you step into the hard place with them, and I did with somebody, and they received it well.
That's awesome.
Because I came at it with humility, meekness, and love, and not accusation.
It's really hard, especially as men, to go into the conflict like that. What are some practices you've done, like to have those conversations without your emotions getting involved? How do you avoid going into that place where it's not speaking what God's putting on your heart, but speaking your own emotions and your own ego?
How do you remove yourself from it?
Yeah.
It starts with space. I give myself some space. If I'm in a situation, and I learned this, it started with my children and learning how to discipline them. And I think I read some books that said you never discipline your child in the heat of the moment, in the emotions. If there's a discipline issue, you take a step back. You take a walk, you give it a day, whatever it is, but you divorce yourself of your emotions. You put your emotions aside, and you figure out what needs to be addressed, the bottom line. Not your emotions, but what is the issue at hand. So again, the answer to your question is space and time, and just a cooling off period, however you want to place it, and then I've learned to pray. I've learned to take it to God and say, you know what? There are things I can do and things you can do and things I can do through you. You make it happen. And that's become my prayer many times. It's like, this is beyond me, Lord. And Pastor Chris said it a couple weeks ago. He goes, pray bold prayers. Put God on the spot and give him the chance to respond. And because when he does, there'll be no doubt that it was him.
He says, you have an incredible God, pray for incredible things.
Absolutely.
Like the impossible things, not something within your own reach, but something that is outside of even your own imagination, and pray for that, because that's what he wants, like you said, us to do, so that when it happens, he's like, there's no other way, I know it was you.
Correct.
And that's, a lot of people don't do that. I mean, do you pray big, or do you pray kind of like,
We had this discussion after the last sermon that he did talking about that, and I think a lot of the real prayers that I've prayed were only because of like a ministry that I was a part of, kind of putting that on us, like, hey, this is what we're going to try to pray for this, or we're going to work on this month or whatever. And so, but on my own, I didn't do that. Like, that wasn't something I thought about. And so being a part of different things and getting that put towards me, like getting that, I don't know, that prompt has helped a lot to think like that. But it's not something you naturally do, because what do we pray for naturally? Oh, please help me with this issue that I have, or give me a safe trip.
I take my issue, I've learned to pray and take whatever I'm asking for and multiply it by the craziest amount or mentally I can think of.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm, and use this as an example, say if you're praying to win the lottery, people are just like, oh, I just want enough to cover, paying off my bills. I'm like, give me $300 million, God. I promise to do the most good to the most amount of people as I can. I would help as many people as humanly possible. Because the only way that would happen is Him. Or if it's somebody in my relationship, I'm like, God, the only way this is going to change within me, within her, within us, is if you step in, because I've reached the limit of what I can do, think, and feel. It's all up to you now.
Yeah, it's hard to get out of the self part of it and think about the other things, but that's right, because it sounds like you're approaching those conversations not like, how am I going to feel better at the end of this, but the way to be effective in it and to do the things that you've done in those conversations where they've been effective was to think, or to come at it from a place of, how do I talk to them and get them to be in a better place or come to a better result? And that's, the selflessness of that is something that I would have to ask God for help with, especially with the emotions of it.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good approach that I have done sometimes, but not intentionally.
We've talked about that before, like taking ourselves off the burner. Like, we're not even on the back burner, we're not even on the stove, it's them first. We're there to serve them, we're helping them, that unconditional love, and do the best that you can for that person. And that's enough for you.
So your businesses and your work ethic, that was the first thing that me and you connected with, because you saw me working crazy hours, working on a business, running into church on Sundays, trying to just catch the sermon and then running back to work. So I'm interested about your businesses. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what were you said you had 2 businesses. Tell us what those were.
My uncle saw me working the 2-3 jobs and going to school, and he stepped in and he goes, I can help you. And he'd always kind of been there and tried to do that. I was like, how? And he goes, well, how about your own business? I'm like, really? Anyways, to make a longer story short, he had a swimming pool service. He goes, I can get you started in this, and it's a great business. He says, low overhead, there's not a lot of money up front. You need to get yourself a truck and some working capital, but I can teach you how to do it and launch you in that direction.
Like servicing pools?
Servicing pools, okay. Correct. So with that, he goes, I will help you on one condition. I said, what condition is that? He goes, you don't get married.
What?
He had just gone through a horrible divorce.
Oh, I was about to say, that is
and he was bitter.
Great advice on the business, terrible advice on the deal.
He was very angry and bitter. So we got started, and he started training.
You agreed to it, and then...
Well, I just kind of...
whatever.
Yeah, whatever, pretty much, right. And he got me started. Well, then I met my wife, and I was swept away, and next thing I know, we're getting married. And he said, you're on your own. You made your decision. Go out and make it work.
Really? So he was serious.
He was serious.
It's a jerk
I'm like,
move.
What? Well, I had a couple pools now, and I had some knowledge, and I'm like, all right, cool. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. No, it was a good thing.
Yeah.
How long was that between?
I don't recall. It was within a year.
Oh, so it was fast. Like
year or two.
Okay.
Yeah, it was right after I pretty much started doing the pools, and I remember thinking, really, dude? So I said, fine. I'm gonna blow you out of the water, man.
Game on.
Blow you game on.
Now you're the competition.
Now I'm your competition.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I took it to a different level. I went and got training. I would go learn. I went and got my contractor's license 10, 15 years before it was required. I got bonded. I got insured. I did everything. I dotted my I's, crossed my T's, built it up. The one thing that I didn't do, that I couldn't do, is I was struggling getting the business going because it's a business that requires you to be absolutely consistent. And I had vehicles that would break down. So he came in and goes, hey, I'm gonna co-sign for a truck. And we got a new truck. And my business blew up after that because I was consistent. But what happened was, again, I did all these things that people weren't doing as a pool service. And I became very knowledgeable at I was very good at what I did. So it's funny because I would go in and compete against 3 or 4 other guys for an account. And we had this new guy come into town that was lowballing. He opened a store and he was trying to just get established and he was lowballing everybody. So let's say pool service was $50. And he'd come in and offer it for $30. And I'd be competing against him because I would be offering it for $100.
Oh. But you provided more service, right?
Here's the deal. What I did is I went in and educated my customers and go, why would you pay me so much more than this guy? Here's why. And I would explain to him, I'm licensed, I'm bonded, I'm a contractor, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to save you money. And they go, what are you talking about? In the long run, in the short term, you're paying me a little bit more each month. But in the long term, I'm going to save you money. Because let's say you're hired this guy for $50 less a month, and he's using cheap chemicals in your pool. He doesn't know what he's doing. So 5 years down the road, you have to replaster your pool for $10,000. How much money do you save? You lost money. Or let's say your motor is bad. I'm sorry. Let's say you've got a little leak on your motor, but the guy that's hiring some kid to clean your pool for $10 an hour walks in, looks at the leaks, goes, I'm busy. I got things to do. I go in and fix it immediately. I just saved you $500 on a motor repair. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. So where was I going with this? My business became my education. I wanted to go to school because of my grades growing up, because of my work ethic, whatever. I couldn't get into a college. I wanted to be an artist. And so my business became my education. It was so amazing because I took it seriously. I dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. I learned electricity. I learned plumbing. I learned hydraulics. I learned chemistry. I learned all these. I learned marketing. I learned sales. I had all these things. I loved it so much. And originally I wanted to have a store, and I'm like, that was my goal. And then I made friends with a couple people who had stores, and I go, nope. Nope.
Not today.
Those stores there. And I'm like, no, I have a more profitable business than them.
Yeah.
And I have more freedom than them. So I didn't go there. But I got to the 25-year mark on my business, and I go, I've reached my max. I'm bored. Originally, I could always, like when I got bored, I'd find something else to do. I got my contractor's license. I was more than just a pool service. I was a repair guy. I did all these repairs, like crazy stuff, cool stuff. And I just educated myself and learned how to do it. And it was so much fun. But it was fun because it challenged me. Then I got to the point where it wasn't a challenge. So then I went into spas and I learned that whole deal. And I got to the point, I'm like, okay, the next thing is a store. And I'm like, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. So I got rid of the business. I hit 25 years and I'm like, I'm done. I was going to do a hardware store or a clothing store or something. And one day I go, you know, I'm really good at photography. I'm going to do photography. So I opened a photography business. And the funny thing was, I didn't know how to photograph. But I had a business background. And I'm an artist. So I combined those two. And what I did is I went down to Las Vegas every year for like a week at a time and took all these classes, a big seminar down there. Took all these classes, learned how to do it. I'm like, I can do this. And the funny thing was, in my pool business, one of the things I learned was, you have two types of clients out there. One that wants the lowest price, and one that wants the job done right. Doesn't care what the price is. And that's how I learned how to market to those people. And then I applied that to my photography business, and it just blew up. We took off. It was crazy. It was so cool. We were just going at it. But it came at a steep price, because I was working 120 hours a week, just going for it. And I missed the first 5 years of my son's life, because I was gone. I was chasing this business. It was cool in the fact that I started shooting weddings and stuff with my wife and daughters. So it was kind of cool. We're kind of doing destination weddings, in Napa and San Francisco and stuff. But it came at a high price, and God had a different plan for me. And I had the accident, and I remember lying in the hospital bed, and he said, "I have a different direction for you." Did I mention that story?
No. So tell us about your accident.
Yeah.
I had been on the first accident. We went head on, coming back from Bishop Pumpkin Farm with my 4-year-old daughter. Somebody ran a light and took us out, and almost died. Both my wife and I almost died. She broke her back. I was in the ICU for quite a long time. My daughter wasn't hurt at all. But in that accident, I had to wheel myself into her emergency room. She's still in the emergency room bed, and tell her that when I was unconscious, they did full body scans. They found I was riddled with cancer. And she rolled over to me in tears in her eyes and she said, "Well, we just lost our son."
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So that was one of our major turning points. But our daughter was not injured at all, because she was in the car seat in the center of the vehicle.
Wow.
I'm sorry, where was I going with this? I don't remember.
No, we were talking about your accident years. You kind of.
Okay, so that was the first accident.
Yeah.
So anyways, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I went down to Stanford and looked at bone marrow transplant. And I heard the options and the ramifications or what could happen. And I go, no, I'm not doing that. I am not doing that. And it's funny I say that, because I just had a friend who had a similar cancer, not the same, that chose to do the bone marrow transplant. We're talking 25 years later, and it killed him. It wasn't the cancer, it was the procedure that killed him. So anyway, whatever I was saying. Anyways, at that point, I started, I bought a pair of running shoes. I started running, and I hated running. I broke my thigh when I was in middle school, and I did anything I could not to run, because I broke my femur. And it hurt. And eventually I started running, and then after running a marathon and a bunch of half marathons, and I finally got to the point I'm like, I want to be able to walk when I'm older, and I feel like if I keep running, I'm not going to be able to, so I got into cycling. So I kept the cancer at bay. Every time I'd go in 6 months, I'd go in, or 6 months I'd go in for a test, and they'd say, "You're fine." And then when they said, "You're not," I'm like, "All right, give me a month or two, see what I can do." And I'd go out and just bust it. And it held it off, kept holding it off. But on the bike, I had another accident. I was up riding above Salmon Falls, or above Folsom Lake on Salmon Falls Road, and went head on through the windshield of a car.
Oh my gosh.
And broken back, broken neck, broken hip, coma for a week, cut off my ear, and a traumatic brain injury. And then I woke up 3 months later, because I lost cognitive. I came out of the coma after a week, but I lost cognitive ability. So 3 months later, I woke up in San Francisco and finally realized who my wife was. And she said I asked her every day who she was for like 3 months.
Wow.
And I was paralyzed on the right side of my body. I couldn't speak. I couldn't talk. I couldn't, everything. So I had to learn how to speak. I had physical therapy, occupational therapy, all these different therapies. So God kind of used the circumstances to change the direction of my life. Because as I had the downtime, and that was the thing that was Satan's greatest tool against me walking with God, was I just kept pushing. I had no time for anything. And he put me on my butt where I could just have some quiet time and start to talk to him. Originally it came with questioning, and then it came with listening, and then it came with probably one of the biggest turning points in my life was did I tell you about the goal setting?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'm laying in a hospital bed, and I realize, after telling me what happened, I'm realizing what is going to happen. We're going to lose our home. We're going to lose everything because I'm sole income. So I asked my wife for a pad and a paper. She goes, what for? I said, because I need to build a plan how to get us out of this, how we're going to survive this. I need to come up with a plan. And at that moment, it was probably the first real time that I really felt God was speaking to me, or that I could hear God or whatever. He wasn't speaking to me. I didn't hear voices, but in my heart, he goes, stop. Your plans, your planning, all this goal setting, motivational stuff you've been reading and listening to for all these years have become your God. And that's wrong. And I remember asking, not speaking, but just questioning, well, what do I do? He goes, trust me. I'm like, what does that mean?
There's one of those.
I mean, you made me the man of the house, responsible. I have responsibilities. What do I do? He goes, trust me. He goes, look at your life. Look at you. You're laying in a hospital bed, and your wife is sitting out there filling out deposit slips. What are you talking about? He goes, you are judging your life on the wrong things and things through the wrong filter. You are very wealthy. You have all your friends who are making your house payment right now, and they did for like a year.
Wow.
They all banded together. He goes, tell me how many men can say that? He goes, you're a very wealthy man, but you're looking at everything through the wrong lens. And so I remember saying, well, what do I do? And he goes, I will give you the next step. And when you do that, I'll give you another step. And when you do that, I'll give you another step. I'm like, what does that mean? This is exactly what I'm communicating to you. You're going to learn obedience and trust. I'm going to teach you obedience and trust.
Those are some horrible lessons.
And it's like, okay. And I remember, okay, and I said, well, what's your plan? He goes, no, I'm not going to give you a plan. I'm going to tell you what to do next. And he did.
What did he tell you to do?
Well, I told you the example of pulling my wife aside with my child.
Yeah.
That I talked about. That was one of the steps. He goes, that is a place of obedience I want you to hear, to respond to.
Wow.
How do I do that? He goes, through me. I'm gonna be there. The Holy Spirit is there. You need to tap into it. So that was the first step. And as that came, something else would come, and something else would come. And as I did, I moved further and further into seeking out his guidance and seeking out his strength versus my own strength. And I'm telling you, it was transforming. I mean, I fought with the allure of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And that was what I grew up with, you know. And when the marriage got difficult, I got into pornography, and it had an effect on my marriage. Because instead of facing the pain, I escaped from the pain. So instead of fixing the problem, I just put the problem under the pillow and said, we'll deal with it later. And recognizing that there was a problem, eventually, I'm like, all right, I'll fix it. And I couldn't fix it. I couldn't fix it no matter how hard I tried.
I kind of walked down that same path. It was a very difficult thing to overcome.
It's a stranglehold.
Yeah,
it's a stranglehold. But the problem, or the challenge was, I was trying to fix it. And God allowed that to be in my life because he had to teach me to go outside myself and to go to him to find my strength. And as I did, things started changing in different, I mean, It was amazing. I remember reading books, and I'm like, all right, so the marriage is struggling because we don't communicate. Because I'm a one word type of person. Response. She's got a cold conversation, and I call it landing the plane. Women can circle the airport. Circle the airport. I'm like, just land the damn plane. They want to circle the airport. They want to talk. They want to, just land the plane, and I'll tell you which runway. I want to fix it.
Yeah.
But I would read a book, and it would explain that to me, and I'm like, all right, cool. So I would apply that principle to my life, and things improved. Our communication improved. All these things. Or financially, I'd have a struggle, and I'd read a book, and I'd fix it. Well, I would read books on how to clean myself up here. Nothing. It was the stranglehold was too tight. And some men, it's pornography. Some men, it's their anger issues. Some men, it's drinking. Some men, it's food. Whatever it is.
Some men, it's all of them.
Some men, it's all of them. But I think God allows those because He needs us to realize that we're not it. We're not God. We can't fix everything. But He can.
Yeah, I will definitely say that. I have said this multiple times, that nothing's impossible with God. And the only reason I can say that wholeheartedly is because the addictions, the things that you struggle with, I struggle with, the same stuff online or whatever, and anger. And I dealt with, overeating a majority of my life, so I was always running from it. And it wasn't until, about 5 years ago now that I really started to listen, and I came to a turning point in my life that I had to start facing all those things. But I couldn't do it alone. There's no way. I had to take myself out of the driver's seat and sit in the passenger seat and let Him drive.
Right.
And let Him tell me where to go and why, and just go along for the ride.
And I'm in the same boat. The example I would use, I handed over the reins.
Yeah.
Handed over the reins. I'm like, this is beyond me, Lord. I have proven that I don't have it in me. And you can make yourself known by making yourself known.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that
right.
100%. That is so true. Because unless you have those demons and those addictions inside you, it's hard to relate to other people how intense that is and how controlling it is in your life. Especially when there are big issues going on in your relationship, or that's just where you go to diffuse. And then not having that, hold over you anymore. Only then, for me personally, and I think you'll attest this too, can you really fully move forward in every relationship in your life. Like every relationship you have from your friends, your family, your significant other, it starts to grow.
The anger was the thing for me. It was the biggest thing, for sure. But at least in my relationships, with my relationship with my wife, the anger was the way I controlled things when things got out of control. Because before that, it was living, with the womanizing and just living life my own way, right? And without God, without any sort of functional map or guidance. And so I was just doing everything the way I wanted to do it. And then when I met my wife and we got more into God and started to follow Him and give some of those, give everything that I had that I felt like I had control over up, then I would get flustered with things. And when things wouldn't work out the way that I wanted them to, the anger was the way that I was controlling things. It was something that at least I had control over that piece of whatever. And turning to God was the only way that I got over that, but it took a long time. It was really hard.
And that's something that the Lord finally revealed to me. He goes, a lifetime, and you're expecting immediate change?
Yeah.
No, you need to learn to persevere and continue to trust and turn it over to me. And that was a struggle because I'm like, you do good and then you all of a sudden fail, and I'm like, and when it comes to me, I'm pretty timid and mild with most people. But when it comes to me, I turn the knife on myself and I carve and I dig and I beat the hell out of myself. And God showed me explained to me one day, he goes, that is not of me.
That's the devil.
That is not of me. That is not me.
Yeah.
And that took me a while to get over it, where I just learned that, okay, Lord, this is beyond me. I'm trusting that you are completing the work that you started in me.
Yeah.
And every time it didn't happen on my timing, God eventually started showing me that I do things on my timing.
Yeah.
Your timing is not my timing. And just because you think something should happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. And when it doesn't happen, you still need to trust that I am completing the work that I started. And part of that is really been, my mental part has really been enriched as I've gotten more and more into his word and just kind of feeding my soul. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And learning to pray. And that was something that I decided I need to learn how to pray. I don't know how to pray. And I started studying on prayer and reading a couple books on prayer and then trying to apply different principles. And now, and as it started happening, I'm like, wow, did that just really happen? I remember I went up to Tahoe and I shattered my hip, and I'm laying on the ground with a shattered hip, and the next thing I know, it's hailing, like this big of hail, just pelting me. And I'm laying, and then there's a river right next to me because it's raining so hard. There's a river there, and I remember thinking, well, this is what happened. I said, okay, Lord, wasn't I listening? Am I not reading and seeking you out and searching? Why this? And it was crazy. It was crazy. I asked a question, and I'm laying there with a broken, shattered hip, and I got an answer.
Don't tell me it was the hail.
And he goes, yes, you're in a good place, but you're headed to a bad place. He goes, you're lining up your ducks in a row. All your stuff, you're lining up your next business venture, you're lining up this to go right back where I've taken you out of. He goes, I have different plans for you. And I'm laying there, shattered hip, waiting on the EMTs, and I remember I started crying. And it wasn't because my shattered hip, was like, I think I just had a conversation with God.
Wow.
I think I just asked him a question and got an answer. Well, did that really just happen? And my next response was, I think I teared up and cried, and I said, thank you. Thank you for caring enough. And this is funny. Then I remember saying, I didn't say it, I just remember thinking, could you have done it some other way?
I think we've all thought that.
Yeah. Literally just knocked you right off the path, right?
The hail, too, just laying there, like, that seems like a scene out of a movie. Some guy getting by a car, laying there looking at the sky, chunks of hail coming down out of nowhere, and you're just like, what did he do?
Yeah, it was crazy.
What were you lining up at that point? What path do you think you were on that you were going down the wrong path?
I fill my plate to overflowing with things to do. I was probably planning to ride another century on my bike, run, who knows. I was planning probably how to rebuild my photography business or what to start next, but just trying to figure out the future and planning and filling my plate. And he goes, no, I need you to carve out quiet time. And that's when I chose to study about meditation and prayer and solitude and quiet time. I remember making a decision somewhere along these lines after the accident. I worked for myself, by myself for 25 years, 30 years. So I became a talk radio addict, junkie, whatever. It filled my empty space. And I remember making the decision. I'm going to give this up. It wasn't give it up. Well, the decision I made was, I'm going to give God the first 10 minutes of my day. When I get in the car, I'm going to have silence. And I remember, first thing I get in the car, click that button. I'm like, nope. Click the button, back off. And it took a while, but then that started to fall away. The hold it had on me started to fall away. And I finally got to the point where I'm like, I'm done with talk radio. I'm done with everything else. And got into worship music, and trust me, I'm still a rocker. I still love all my music. I love every type of music you can think of. But I just I cut out some silence and gave the Lord priority. I said, not only am I going to learn how to ask and speak to you, but I'm going to learn how to listen. And what he kind of guided me on was, not only are you going to listen, but you're going to live in some obedience. That's when things really started to change in my life. When I learned obedience, and when you learn obedience, and you learn how to listen, along with that comes trust. That starts to develop.
One of the things that's made a difference in my life is very similar. I would get into the car, and I have a long commute now, but I used to not have as long of a commute, but I would listen to a podcast, or I'd listen to just almost always podcasts. And I had done the audio book for Wild at Heart. Have you ever read that book?
What?
Wild at Heart?
Yeah,
but yeah.
Eldridge.
Yeah. And so in it, there's a daily prayer. And in the audio book, he goes through it, like reads it out loud, and you just kind of follow along with it. And it takes 10-15 minutes to go through the whole thing. But now I do that every day. And it's the first thing I put on, and then when it's done, I'll put on music or something else. But the days that I don't do that, I notice I don't feel as centered. It's just a different feeling for the rest of the day. It's very easy to get off track if I don't start things off that way. But especially like on the weekends, I'm with my family. I'm not making the commute, right? Like I'm not doing the same things, and it makes a big difference. So I'll get up early now and just do it. Throw a headphone in and walk around and just have that time to pray and think about things. And starting my day off with God and keeping it in mind, the first thing, it makes a big difference.
It does. Something else that I learned, at least applicable to me. I'm not very good at sitting down and praying, especially late in the evening, because I fall asleep.
Yeah.
But what I learned about myself is I'm great at talking with God when I'm walking. So I go for a walk, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I started applying that. I'm like, because I used to walk or run with headphones. I'm like, lose the headphones. Just give this time to God. And what an amazing thing for me. And it's funny. My wife wanted to talk the other day, and I'm like, let's go for a walk. Because I talk better when I'm walking.
Yeah.
It's like if I sit there, it's like I'm a deer in the headlights. Run me over. But if I'm walking, I'm like energized and just who I am.
Thoughts start to flow.
Yeah, it really do. Yeah. So
there's something about the physical movement, like exercise, that makes you think clearer. I've had a ton of, like, when I was first working on the business and stuff like that, if a lot of the issues that I would solve would just be random times when I was doing stairs or doing something else, and something would just pop into my head that I I couldn't figure out how to fix this, or I couldn't think about something, and all of a sudden it just come to me like that.
I've had that too.
Where did that come from?
I think it's because your mind knows that you dislike the cardio so much that it's trying to keep itself on something that needs to be solved.
Focus on something
so you
else.
can just kind of work through issues, because I can't say I still listen to music and stuff when I'm at the gym, but I do listen to podcasts and motivational speeches while I'm doing it instead of music oftentimes. But when I've been doing cardio, or even at work, Like you talk about walking. A guy we work with came up to me on 2 different occasions. He's like, "Why are you talking to yourself? You're just walking around talking." But my lips are moving, but I'm praying out loud to hear like silently, but I'm not paying attention that I'm doing it. So I must just be walking around looking like a crazy person. Like, he's just talking to himself all day long. And he saw me do it. He's like, "I saw you walk this way. You talked to yourself all the way there. You came back 10 minutes later, talked to yourself all the way back over there."
What department does he work in that he has that time to sit and watch you all day?
He knows who he is.
Oh, no, it's something about it. Or just even with music on, it'll just pop into my head. Something, it has a interesting way of clarifying things. I'm not sure what it is, but it definitely helps.
Yeah. Well, I would like to say personally, it has been a pleasure talking with you today. Like, having you on this channel and what we have defined or continue to redefine and grow the definition of what a savage servant is. Just listening to your stories, I mean, you have gone through some of the worst things that I've heard someone go through in single moments of their life, like just one thing after another, and then still come to the point of getting through that and carrying your family and still growing, and then being a servant to God and yourself, your wife, your kids. I mean, that's amazing.
And you're such a positive guy. I mean, going through all that, I could see so many people, including myself, could definitely have such a negative outlook on things. And every time I see you, you're happy. Every time we talked, like you're always willing to give advice from your experiences, which, I mean, it kind of kicked me in the head when I was doing the wrong things, and it definitely made me, I mean, we and you have never even never even met, and something about the conversation we had prompted you to bring up your accident and how God, showed you what was really what you needed to focus on. It definitely changed the way I viewed things just out of that random conversation. So I appreciate you being willing to share with me and then coming on to this and talking to us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. I hope that the people watching and listening, they take a lot away from this, because we are very grateful that you came and shared that with us.
Any parting words of wisdom?
Learn to hear the Holy Spirit. It's there. It's prompting continually. And learn to listen. Learn to carve out time to seek God, to hear Him. And then when you given a direction, go in that direction. And if it's a direction you can't go in, then ask for His strength and His guidance and His ability within you to go in that direction. Mm-hmm. And when you still can't go in that direction, continue to ask. Continue to ask and seek Him. And when you can't, still continue to go in that direction. And as you're doing that, develop some strength. Work at it. Develop some prayer. Develop some carving out some quiet time. And then build like anything you do in life. When you start, it's hard. It's difficult. Most things are difficult. But as you go with it, as you grow, things become easier. Build habits that are taking you in the right direction. And learn to cut out the things that are in your life just for entertainment, that are comforting, just to kill the pain. Face the pain. It is in the pain where God does His most work in our lives, because it gets our attention. It is in the pain where we want to avoid the pain. The problem is, do we avoid the pain in going towards Him to look for solutions and to look for Him to change us, or do we avoid the pain by numbing it, by filling the void, by turning on the television set, by do whatever it is that we embrace and we're good at embracing the things that can keep us from looking at the real cause of what's in our life that needs to be changed. And again, I would say, if there's things in your life that need to be changed and you cannot change it, seek His help. In fact, I would even go to the point of saying, if there are things in your life that you can't change and you sought His help and you continue to seek His help and you need professional help, find the professional help. Go there. Don't continue down the same path. But pain is there for a reason. It's to get our attention that something's not right. Or pain is there for a growing period, temporarily, to get us moving in a direction to strengthen something. Love others. When you love others, you gain strength. You gain motivation. When you give yourself away, when you honestly give yourself away, you are empowered. You're empowered and you gain momentum, you gain strength, you gain inertia. But the problem is most of us tend to battle with our own needs, our own desires, and our own things that drive us that we want to fix about somebody else or about ourselves. So I've learned how to trust God. I've learned how to communicate with Him. And I've learned how to just love Him. And as I've loved Him, I tend to be able to exhibit that love to other people.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate all your wisdom coming on here and being willing to share everything. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, it means a lot.
All right.
All right. So until next time,
Be a savage.
be a servant.